What is up, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Lovely Loners. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at this A Squared Knives A3. For those of you who don't know, A Squared is a South African brand that is comprised of the renowned Andre Thorburn as well as Andre van Heerden. They make excellent knives, and this is the first example of their knives that I was able to get my hands on. This knife is on loan from my buddy Rich. He has lent it to me for an extended period of time, and I am super appreciative of that. So let's just go ahead and jump right into it. I'm going to line this knife up next to a PM2 and RAT2 so we get a nice size comparison. You can see the knife is rather large. It is almost on bodega territory. And as we can see, lined up against the RAT2, it is completely dwarfing the knife, and lined up against the PM2, it's definitely got some length on the knife, a good quarter of an inch, maybe even half an inch or so, and it's a little bit difficult to see. Get these lined up like this, but the A3 is significantly thicker because it has these large contoured handles. It is, of course, a liner lock, and so it's a pretty significant knife. Even standing up like this, the A3 has some real size on the PM2 in terms of how tall it is all the way through the width of the handle. You can see the PM2 gets a little thinner up here towards the top so that you can get your grip around there more. And that is not the case with the A3. This thing completely fills out your hand. It is absolutely massive. Let's go ahead and check out the weight on this knife. So we are going to be running 5.29 ounces, which is pretty heavy. Generally, for EDC people, I find tend to stick between 3.5 and 4.5 ounces. And as we can see, the case here is that the knife is substantially heavier than that. You are going to have no internal milling on the titanium liners. Again, it is a rather large knife to begin with. We do have a pretty thick blade stock, although not too thick ultimately considering the overall size of the knife. But yeah, so those are going to be some of the stats. The first thing that I want to hit on with this knife in the features and flaws is one of my favorite aspects of the knife, which is the G10 scales and the Lightning Strike carbon fiber. The bolster, they have been smooth to a degree which I thought was not possible. The South Africans in general do a great job on G10, but this really takes it to another level. It's like a smoothness that almost makes it feel like a different material. Everyone that I've talked to that's handled it feels the same way that I do. And that's just that it's got, I don't know, it almost feels like soft puppy fur is how smooth it is. Like it does, it's wild. It doesn't even feel like a synthetic material. So it's really impressive. And then another fact that another aspect of them putting the scale together is that they've got this S-curve in the bolster, which is really impressive because, carbon fiber is not the easiest thing to work with. Getting a bolster to have such a smooth transition as this does, just rubbing my finger like this, I can't feel the transition at all. I have my eyes closed and I have no idea what I'm touching. If you do run your finger, you can just barely catch it sometimes. It depends on where you check on the bolster. And it's not even that your finger catches on it. It's more just that you can feel the transition. There's no point at which I actually catch to the point where it stops my finger from rubbing over it. But the fact that they got this little S-curve in here is the really impressive part, that it's so smooth and they have this really complex curve working is, man, it's just really incredible, the work that they did. This is not an easy feat to accomplish by any means, and so the fact that they were able to work that inlay in all the way up here with such a thin margin of error is just super, super impressive. The next thing that I want to mention is the clip. If you guys have been following the channel, you know that The titanium 3D milled clips with the ceramic ball are my absolute favorite clips. They do a fantastic job. You're able to get the knife in and out of the pocket, usually with just one hand, and this is no exception. It is a bit wider and thicker, so it does have a little bit more tension than something on like my Thorburn here, and so that does make it a little bit more of a two-hander, depending on how much a give your pants have, but it's still going to be super smooth and super effective. One little detail that I do want to point out now that I'm thinking about it is it's really cool how they have these divots cut out in terms of design, and if you can actually see there, they've drilled little holes so that you can see the liners. Now, this particular knife has bronze liners, which of course I'm not a super big fan of, but it does make it a little bit more difficult to see with the bronze because it's not too different a color from the tan G10. But if you were to actually get the liners done in a different color, like in a traditional teal or blue or something like that, you would really be able to see that color come through these little holes. And I think that's super cool. It's a really nice touch. I almost don't like that it blends so well here because you don't get to experience the full effect. And I think that a color that contrasted better with the tan, or really any combination of contrasting colors, if you were to get a different configuration of the knife, would look really, really stellar. So the next thing to talk about on this knife is the action. This is one of the snappiest knives I've ever had or held. And by snappy, I'm referring specifically to the speed with which the blade exits the handle. It's just, when it breaks the detent, it's really instant, like creepy instant. I don't know if you guys can, I'm sure the sound isn't really coming through on camera, but it's super loud. It's so loud that like when Rich and I have messed with this knife in like a Starbucks, we kind of like look around and, it's maybe not the best thing to be flipping in public because it's so freaking loud. But just the sheer speed of it. My Thorburn, for example, when I open it, it's very loud, it's super thwackish, it's got a really pleasurable action, but it is not exiting the handle nearly as fast as this knife is. It's just really on another level, the pressure with which the detent has against the blade tang. It's just really, really wicked. So it can be a little bit strong of a detent. It's not so strong that you have difficulty deploying the knife because you do have excellent jimping. You have good leverage here with the flipper tab. It is a big, chunky, giant flipper tab, but I mean, better to have a big, chunky flipper tab that's useful on a giant knife like this than one that's small, but that doesn't work very well. That's the way I feel about it anyway. The next thing to talk about on this knife is the blade. You, of course, have one of these gorgeous South African blades. It's going to be a standard drop point configuration. You've got a nice area of about 1.5 inches of flat cutting edge before you move into a nice mellow belly. It's going to be great for slicing. Of course, you do have the top swedge here. Nice little detail. Mirrored flats with hand-rubbed satin bevels, and it is going to be an absolutely gigantic hollow grind. And so this is going to make for an excellent slicer. As I mentioned, for the size of the knife, the blade stock is rather thin, comparatively to other knives of this size. And so I'm definitely impressed with that. And with this hollow grind that's almost an entire inch tall, you're going to have a really excellent piece for slicing. It's very long, and this is going to be great for things like dealing with food and stuff like that. It's going to be an excellent blade. So that's pretty much it for this one, guys. I wanted to keep this one short and sweet. In terms of, I did just talk about deployment, but in terms of closing, the knife is incredibly smooth. It's what you would expect from like a Thorburn or something like that in terms of smoothness. It's not quite as freely drop shut as those knives. I have been working on breaking this knife in for Rich because he didn't flip it too many times before he handed it over to me. But you can see it takes very minimal effort. It just has a bit of a stronger lock bar, which is why you're not seeing it quite free fall as much. And that is the trade-off for that absolutely wicked fast deployment. The knife is running on multi-row ceramic IKBS. Actually, it's probably steel IKBS, come to think of it. but it is running on multi-row IKBS. No, that doesn't really make a difference in terms of smoothness, but it does make a difference in terms of lateral stability. And yeah, I just want to keep this one short and sweet, guys. Not too much to say about the knife. It's a pretty basic build and configuration. It's absolutely beautiful. It functions incredibly well. It's just pretty large. I would think that somebody going after a knife like this might want something a little bit on the smaller side. A Squared Knives does, of course, offer other models to choose from. So the A3 is rather large. They have an A3 Mini, and then there's plenty of other models to choose from that are in different scales. But so this is definitely a knife to check out if you're looking for something that's a little bit more kind of field grade style versus something more full dress like an actual Thorburn. This one, of course, has lightning strike carbon fiber, but they do come in even more basic configurations where it's G10 on G10. But yeah, thanks so much for watching, guys. If you would like to see other videos with all of these awesome knives, you can do so by subscribing. I would definitely appreciate that. You can see beautiful pictures of all these knives by following me on Instagram at tovarishworks. And of course, if you would like to be like Rich and be awesome and send me a lovely loaner, you can do so by emailing me at tovarishworks@gmail.com. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I will see you next time.